Alright, so now we're on to the second lab, and we're basically going to play a little bit around with the vertex buffer objects and vertex array objects and shaders. So it's basically linked up to the lecture we had last Tuesday. Now before we do this, we're going to set up things a bit differently. So in the first lab you set up everything manually, setting paths to folders and linking. Now we're going to do it using something called CMake. So you'll find, first of all, you find instructions here on the wiki under week 5. So here are this PDF file with the instructions. And then you find a link to the code here, which you may download from this place. And in here you have a README file. And basically here it's explained how you set up Visual Studio using this integrated CMake tool. You can alternatively do it by doing this externally first, and then open the project that CMake makes for you in Visual Studio. And here are instructions for Linux and instructions for Mac. So first and foremost, you have to go and download CMake from this website if you haven't done so. And then you can basically follow the instructions given in the README file here. So that will be the first task. So just follow it step by step and ask us if you have any questions or get stuck with it. Okay, let's see. Okay, good. Then you will see this is a different way of setting things up, and it's a bit easier than what you did in Lab 1 once you get it up and running. Then after that you can download the code from here. Basically, here is all you need. And yeah, there are instructions here. You'll recognize a lot of these things from the first lecture. A little bit about shaders, how you set versions in them, link up to your OpenGL version that runs on your PC. Oh yeah, there's a little error here. It should be OpenGL 4.5 linked to version 450. Otherwise it's the same. So you can read through this, and when you download the code here and run it directly, then you should get this default basically. So you have 4 triangles with some random colors assigned, and every time you rerun this it will look a little bit different. So you can sit down, you can study the code, go through it and look how the vertex buffers are set up, how the shaders are, and so on and so forth, and try to understand how you get this output. So it will sort of like the and some of these things were explained in the lecture last Tuesday. So I'd just like to remind you that you have different ways of laying out your buffer, depending on different attributes. So in this case, if you want to have position and color, you have many choices. You could, for example, put position in one buffer object, with the positions at a time after each other like this, vertex 1, vertex 2, vertex 3. Then you could put color in another one, like you color for first vertex, second vertex, third vertex, and so on and so forth. The alternative is to put them up in blocks. So first we have all the position data for all the vertices, and then you get all the color data. Now this is the setup. That's the default in Lab 2, basically. So you can look there and see how that's done. And then, yeah, the third one is the interleave. I won't talk about that today. So if you can go back to this to see yeah, an example of how you set it up. But the example in the lab will be better because you have an output that you can look at, basically. And I think last time there was a question about this. yeah, you set the stride here in bytes. I don't know, remember exactly who asked the question. And then it was the question if this was in bytes as well, and yeah, that's of course what it is. I said something else, but that was wrong. Basically, it's all in bytes, and that makes more sense. So, just to correct my own mistake. Right, so if you follow these guidelines and you start to understand that, your task is to generate another output where the colors in here are dynamically changing, and you should also add another object. So if you do this, you should get something like let me see, like this. So the colors should change dynamically, and you should add this other object here. Now notice that this is a bit different from these ones. These are basically 4 triangles with changing colors, and then you have this object here, which is actually when you draw this, you should consider to put it in another vertex array object. Right, so you create another one for this, because it's quite different from these ones. It doesn't have any color, it's just basically a line going between the vertices. We should also use a different primitive, if you remember that back from the last lecture. I talked about that towards the end here. So you have these different primitives. In this case, you could choose to use another one. And it would be an idea then to put up this in another vertex array. So you get the training in setting up different vertex arrays as well, and how you enable and disable them and get this output. Any questions before you start? Yeah.
So when you draw the 4 triangles first, and then you bind the next array object, vertex array object, and then draw that. Just do they all?
Yeah, you do the same procedure for both. So you can finish one, for example. This one with the changing colors. First of all, you have to make the colors dynamic. So you basically update what you have in the code you download. Because and then you want to put up these vertices here and draw a line between them. And then you follow the same procedure for that one as you did for the first. So you bind, you upload the data, and then you enable.
But you draw on the same buffer.
No, I don't. I think in this case, since you have 2 very different objects, it would be an advantage to maybe set it up in another vertex array.
Yeah, but if you have 2 vertex array objects and then you draw one and then you draw the second one,
yeah,
do they stick on? If they're on the same screen.
That's what I would like you to play around with to figure out. Because you will update the rendering loop also to do this. But you can try, and if you get stuck with it, I can come up with a solution. There are several solutions to this, but in that particular case, I think it's the best practice to use another vertex array on this one, or is that a bit overkill?
It depends if you're before or after GL 4.5. With 4.5, it's pretty normal to have 1 VAO for every rendering pipeline, and then just switch out which VBO you're using. But before, you often use 1 VAO per VBO.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and this lab is currently pre 4.5, but you can write it however you like. Yeah. But it's usually 1 VAO for each different shader, which has different inputs. So since one of these have colors and the others doesn't have to use colors, you can have 2 VAOs for it. But they basically just describe the layout. That's their only purpose. And the VBO holds the actual data that follows this layout. So if you have 2 different layouts, like one with position and color and one with just position, those would be different descriptions of how the data is laid out.
And back to your question, when you draw, I think here, for example, you could draw another primitive. So here you have the GL triangles, but here, for example, you could use a line loop. Then what would you do?
So in, for example, Pac-Man, we have several draws.
like draw the different.
We can get back to that later.
Yes,
Does all those 4 triangles use the same DBO? When,
in the example.
Yeah, in this case it does, yeah.
okay.
So you have this. If you look at the code, you will find that it has. Oops, sorry. This layout here, with all the position attributes, and then towards the end you have all the colors.
Okay.
So you set up the attribute pointer slightly different from what I did in the example during the lecture last Tuesday, because then I used 2 buffer objects.
And with primitives, what type of primitive have you used on the example? Or
Well,
have you-
the example here is a line loop.
okay.
So you have triangles first, and then you have this GL line loop here on the other one. So there are of course also somewhat different shaders on these ones, because you have these dynamic colors. Here you basically just have a line on the same background as you have. So you basically, it's basically you see the background through here. So you're basically just drawing a line.
Okay.
If you draw a triangle, you would get some other color there, like black or white, or depending on what you. Any other questions? Okay.